couple teachers that were really loud and vocal about it. There was some that had family members in New York at the time, and then we had one teacher who just completely panicked, running around the building screaming.
In total disbelief that, someone would cross our borders and intentionally strike the United States of America. It was just total disbelief and shock.
Yeah, the way I felt, I think it was more, even though you may not have known somebody that died, but you still felt like someone close to you had just died too. Just the magnitude of it.
Most kids didn't know what to expect. The typical questions, are we at war? Is someone going to hurt us here at the school? Is something going to happen in Salem? So a lot of questions without answers. But there was general anxiety among some of the kids.
All of our families in New York. My mother, both my sisters, didn't know anybody specifically who was at the World Trade Center. We found out later that we did, that one of our cousins was worked there. He just didn't go to work that day.
I was notified by the principal, and one of the principals at the school had called all available teachers that weren't in a classroom or didn't have kids to come into the office so she could make us aware of what happened. Basically the directive was to try to keep order as well we could at the school and try to give the kids some information, but not all information. We didn't want to panic anyone more than they were already panicked.
We were notified by a phone call from, the police department, hey, turn the TV on, this is what was going on. And then it just went from there as like you had called, people that I know, it's like, hey, you have your TV on, and you see what's going on, and it was just word of mouth, and it just traveled. And then the media got a hold of it, obviously, from everybody turning their TVs on, and it just went from there.
I don't really remember. I'm sure I tried to call my sister in New York. I don't know if we could get through. That, phone lines were so tied up. But I'm pretty sure I got to somebody. Maybe my mother. And knew that, she was not in the area. But Ruth, my sister, worked at Beth Israel Hospital. And she's a first responder. So she and my other sister, who worked at another hospital in New York, were both busy. We couldn't get a hold of them, and they were working.
We paid attention to the events for the rest of the day, into the evening, into the next day, because you didn't know if it was, was that the final episode of what was happening, or was there more to come? So everybody was just paying attention. Everybody was on high alert.
I was thinking, no, I don't even know. Probably some of the typical feelings of tragedy, and at the same time thankful. I didn't know anyone who was in New York at the time, who wasn't on one of the airplanes. I think anger as to who would do this to us Americans in our country, and kind of the nerve of people to do that. What was going to be the next step? Would this be a full-on war between our country and whoever did it? I think I can't remember whether on 9/12, or how long it was afterwards before people really had an idea who was involved. I can't imagine it was within 24 hours.
So that was, to see it as it was going on was probably the scariest part, because now you see the footage and you're like, wow, yeah.
So there's a lot of people, we were watching the second plane live is a little tough to swallow at first.
Mm-hmm.
You just don't understand what happened.
The strange thing I remember was school had ended shortly after. Well, no, that's not sure what happened in the morning. By the time I got out of school, I was able to get to my car, and I tuned into the radio. It was actually the Howard Stern show, which was the typical morning show at the time, had extended. It was gone, and he had stayed on the air, and he was giving the coverage. And if you know Howard Stern or knowing about the show, it's a really kind of a raunchy comedy show, but it was a